I spoke to one of the largest real estate developers in Belgium. And they told me we would like our first strategy to be to sell to a corporate landlord, and only if that doesn't work, we're going to sell one by one. Also, in terms of production, it's cheaper for them, right? Because they can standardize the whole building. Each apartment is exactly the same.
Corporate landlords, cheaper for investors, standardized apartment units. Yes, our dear friends, this is why you struggle to afford a decent home and why your city is getting uglier every year. It's because of the financialization of the housing market. Now, what is financialization of housing market? Simply put, using houses as money instead of as places to live. Okay, this was maybe oversimplification, but that's why our friend, urban geographer and researcher Max will actually explain this concept a bit deeper. You're watching Stripping Architecture, and let's strip the architecture of our cities and explore how corporate landlords are making the city inaccessible for you.
So, today we are standing in the heart of the European quarter in Brussels with our friend Max. Max, please tell us some stuff about yourself, your research,
Sure.
and yeah.
So I'm an urban geographer and a former urban researcher at the KU Leuven, where I used to do research on financialization of rental housing, specifically in Brussels.
So, could you please take us in a little journey about this terminology of phenomena, let's call it, and how did you end up landing in the European quarter?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the financialization of rental housing, it's a topic that's been being researched more and more, I'd say, since like 10, 15 years. Very simply put, it's when rental apartments are not only used as a house anymore, but more and more also as a tradable asset, something that has a set market value, that generates revenue, and that can be traded on financial markets between investors. And this is a process that is relatively new in Brussels, but we see this happening in many European cities and in cities worldwide for a longer time already. And so the study I did together with my colleagues at the KU Leuven was to get an idea of what does this process really look like in Brussels, who are the main investors, and what impact does it have on the rental market and on the city in general.
Well, actually, you know what? We are learning this new concept and I didn't get it fully. Please, could you elaborate more on this financialization of rental housing? Because it sounds simple, but very complex. What does it mean, like, to be exchanged in the stock market? And yeah, it's very confusing, actually. It's very confusing.
I will explain this. Financialization of rental housing. Like I said before, it's when a house becomes more and more used as a tradable asset. That's very simply put. But on a more structural level, we also see a change in how the rental market operates and what kind of actors are active in the rental market. That is also the financialization of rental housing, the increasing dominance of financial investment firms, of their business models, their ways of operating, and their logics in the rental market. To make this very concrete, in Brussels, we see that small individual landlords who own maybe 1 to 5 apartments are really the biggest group. Like if you rent a house in Brussels, it's very likely it will be someone who maybe lives in the same building or who lives in Wavre and has one investment property. Wavre is a small town a bit outside of Brussels. But what we see as financialization of rental housing develops, we see more corporate landlords also investing in the rental market. And this is a big change because they operate in a different way. They buy and let properties on a professional basis on a much larger scale. Also, these landlords often own around 500 or 1,000 apartments. That's common in Brussels. But there are other cities like Berlin, where you have extremely large corporate landlords who own 20, 30, 40,000 apartments. The rise of corporate landlords is really pushed also by institutional investors. Now, what is an institutional investor? This is a very big investment firm like a pension fund, an insurance fund, a bank, or a sovereign wealth fund. And these companies, they invest often with public money, right? So they are looking for low risk investments and that give a long-term stable return. And so they turned to housing because they believe in the stability of the property market, and rental housing also gives this stable income of rental payments. So there you see institutional investors give rise to corporate landlords. Corporate landlords buy properties in a rental market, and in that way are connected to financial markets as well.
Stay on the case study in Brussels, right in the heart of the commission. Before this, correct us if it's wrong or right, there was this initiative by the region and the EU to redevelop the entire neighborhood. What is it about, and what is the relation with the financialization of the rental market?
So City Forward is a redevelopment project of 23 buildings of the European Commission. They sold these buildings in 2023 to a public-private partnership, which was partly the Belgian federal state. They own 49% of the portfolio, and partly private investors, mostly institutional investors, like ATS, an insurer, KBC, ING, a German bank, a bank from Luxembourg, and also the Brussels region invested themselves in this project. The goal for the European Commission was to reach their own climate goals, to sell off the buildings. They don't have to redevelop it, renovate them themselves.
Because energy is so poor, energy performance.
Energy performance is poor, and they did not want to invest in the renovation. So most of these buildings, they will be redeveloped to offices and then likely rented to the European Commission again. But 8 buildings are destined for redevelopment to housing, which in itself is a really interesting idea, because if you've ever been to the European Quarter after 5, 6 o'clock, you can see it's extremely quiet. There's no one in the streets. So it's not a neighborhood where really people live. So yeah, it's a good idea to realize more housing here. But the big question is, how do you do this and for who? And I think there some poor decisions have been made. All the 8 buildings for housing have been sold to Home Invest Belgium, which is a corporate landlord, and they don't offer any guarantees on social housing.
They bought 8 buildings, previous offices to the commission. How does it look like? How big is this plot?
It's very big. We are here at the biggest plot of the whole project, which is the ILO. And you see the buildings from here all the way to the end of the street are sold to Home Invest. Those are a few of the 8 buildings that Home Invest has bought. So in total, it's about 70,000 square meters of housing.
Now, this takes us to the development of Home Invest. We are focusing only on houses? We know it's for, or there is no diverse function, ground floor, commercial sort of public facilities, kindergarten, schools, whatever, sport facilities?
Yes, on the ground floor, there will be some commerce, and there will also be some public facilities as well, but it's quite minimal.
Sounds like very expensive. What about the affordable houses, social housing? Does the Belgian state oblige them to keep the quota, or there must be certain percentage for diversity in a way, or affordable?
This is a big problem in this project. There have been no enforceable criteria for social housing in this project. The city architect wrote some guidelines that they would prefer 25% social housing, but this was not enforceable. So there's no guarantee whatsoever that Home Invest will realize social housing. And I think that really shows the issue here, because we are talking about public money. For the sale was 880 million euros. So 440 million euros of public money has been invested in this project. And it's public money that is not being used for public welfare, because in the end, the apartments that are being built will only be accessible to residents with the highest incomes. And in this neighborhood, that will likely be expats.
Wait, like in the entire development, there is zero social slash affordable houses. How come 50% of the investment is public money, as you said, but how come this has like passed or pulled through?
Well, I think I'm just as surprised as you are. I also don't understand why there's not more public attention or outrage about this, that so much public money is being invested in Brussels, which is a city where there's such a high demand for social housing.
Especially we are close to one of the most dense municipalities in Brussels.
Exactly. We're next to Saint-Just, which is one of the densest and also one of the poorest municipalities of Brussels. So this was really an opportunity to use public money for more affordable, more social housing alternatives. I think one thing that I could say is that the federal investment fund, the sovereign wealth fund of the Belgian state, this investment does fit in their real estate investment strategy. You see that they often invest in for-profit investment companies that, one of them has partly a social mission, but most of them don't. And they prioritize often the sustainability of these investments. So that is something that I will have to say about this. They will be renovated and probably they will be of decent quality and will have good energy performance. But again, the prices will be high. And the problem is that the Belgian Sovereign Wealth Fund thinks this is enough already. They think we make an investment in sustainability and the social aspect of it then is neglected.
Give me the camera. Wait, we are calling for the Belgian state, Brussels government, anyone, public institution engaged in this project to come on camera with us or go publicly. Just explain why the fuck there is no affordable slash social housing. Punt.
So going back to financialization of rental housing, I think the City Forward project and the fact that they sold to Home Invest is really interesting because it shows how the state also facilitates financialization. It paves the way for institutional investors and corporate landlords to invest in the Brussels rental stock. And this is something that happens in Brussels. You see the state giving tax breaks to investment companies, to provide capital for companies, and to also make an investment like this possible by investing themselves. And it happens in many other cities as well. So financialization is not a process that comes just from the markets. It's also something that is facilitated by the state.
Do you see this happening all over the city? Like it will become at some point an urban development pattern in different neighborhoods in Brussels, or it's very specific to what?
No. Well, one thing that's important to say about financialization of rental housing in Brussels is that it's a starting process. It's emerging. It's not as far as advanced as in other cities like Amsterdam or Berlin or North American cities. But I said before, financialization also changes the way the market operates, right? And we do see some of these changes happening already. I think one very interesting example is real estate developers that have traditionally always built for the homeownership market. They build an apartment building and they sell the units one by one because it's more profitable. They start to recognize the advantages of building a rental apartment building and selling the whole building in bulk to one corporate landlord. There's much less risk involved because you know beforehand, I'm going to sell the entire building. I spoke to one of the largest real estate developers in Belgium, and they told me, we would like our first strategy to be to sell to a corporate landlord, and only if that doesn't work, we're going to sell one by one. Also, in terms of production, it's cheaper for them, right? Because they can standardize the whole building. Each apartment is exactly the same.
Easy to manage as well, maintenance, yeah.
Easy to manage, exactly. And at the same time, you also see that corporate landlords and their investors that back them are also pushing for more professionalization in the market. What does that mean? A landlord that owns one property they do all the administration themselves. They send you the contract. This is a hassle. So a corporate landlord doesn't want to do it like that. They hire a property manager who does all this work for them. But an issue that has come up in our research is that there are very little property managers that can actually do the work for corporate landlords, and that can also do all the admin that's involved for institutional investors. They need a lot of paperwork on what is the financial performance of the building, what is the energy performance of the building. So you also see these private actors pushing for professionalization of the rental markets. And a third point that's quite important as well is that in the long term, financialization of rental housing will lead to a change in power relations in the city. We've already seen this, for example, when the federal government, the Belgian federal government, wanted to change the rules about value-added taxes on redevelopment of properties. Maybe you remember. Maybe some of the viewers will remember. Corporate landlords and institutional investors got together. They wrote a letter to the responsible minister to say how this would harm their business, how it would harm housing production, which would then also harm the cities and the public goal of housing provision. So as the power of corporate landlord grows, their power in the market grows, their power in housing politics grows. And then again, we come to this question, who do we want to be responsible for housing provision? Well, I would prefer actors, public actors, who can be held accountable and who give hard guarantees to permanent housing affordability. Because this is so often forgotten. If we talk about housing affordability, we need to strive for permanent affordability. You know, social housing, when it was built 100, 150 years ago, these apartments are still low price, still affordable. And that's the long-term ambition we need to have, which I don't believe corporate landlords can offer this at all. So instead, we need to invest in alternatives that take housing from the market, like housing cooperatives, like community land trusts, like public social housing as well. And we need to install rent regulation that really breaks with market prices.
So Brussels has almost more than 1 million square meter empty offices, and the potential / risk to be fulfilled with such examples, financialization of the housing market. What are your thoughts about this?
I'd say, these vacant buildings are definitely a potential because you can reactivate them. Some of them, not all office buildings, but some office buildings can be used for housing. So that's a good way to densify, to not demolish, to not have to build a completely new building. That's good. But then again, the question is, for who do we do this? And who does the redevelopment? And I think there you need to make clear decisions for partners that can guarantee permanent affordability, like an organization like the Community Land Trust Brussels or like Fairground. There are alternatives to corporate landlords. But it's, in projects like this, like the City Forward project, where the state is also involved, it's also a political decision. Who do you decide to work with? And I think there's definitely room for improvement.
Okay, listen, guys, we are super optimistic. Any last words, thoughts, conclusion, something you would like to share with our audience?
For sure. I think today it's a little bit difficult to be optimistic today in Brussels because there is such a big political crisis and such a budgetary crisis. But at the same time, we do see that the Sovereign Wealth Fund can invest 440 million euros in a project like City Forward. So it does seem that there is public money still. And the alternatives are also there. There are organizations that know how to realize permanent affordable housing. So it is really a question of political will, of which organizations we choose to work for and who do we choose to produce housing for. Voila.
Thanks a lot, Max. And yeah, we hope that you have liked this video and we wish that everyone will have at least a house, a shelter, a roof, not just end up with loads of lofts and what.
Another quick question. Do you have any kind of book to recommend to the viewers to read or a research paper or something that like talks about this quality of housing or housing crisis, whatever?
Oof.
Any on your, if you not know.
Catching me off guard here. Well, there's a very good film called Push. It's a documentary which talks about financialization of housing worldwide, in Europe, in North America, also in South America. That's super informative. There's Charlotte Cazier, who does super interesting research on co-living and financialization. Alice Romainville was done research on financialization of housing production. So yeah, there's a lot of information out there. I would say search for it, financialization of housing, and you will find a lot of super interesting information.
Push. The movie Push, huh?
Exactly.
Like Push. Okay.
Thanks.
And now it's time for our city secret sketch. In the illustration, you see one person who owns a factory and a piece of land. The factory is probably no longer functioning and the owner is looking for someone to sell it to. On the other side of the industrial site, we see another person holding a rope that bundles together multiple houses. It is clear that these two individuals are negotiating some kind of trade, a group of small houses in exchange for a large industrial property. At first glance, there may seem to be nothing wrong with this, but if you look more closely, you will notice something important. The houses tied together in that bundle are not just abstract properties, they're homes pulled out of the city's living fabric. They once belonged to different families. Now, however, they're owned by a single entity and are being used not as homes, but as bargaining chips, as purchasing power, as tradable assets, to acquire something else. This is where the problem begins. When housing becomes a tradable asset rather than a place to live, it fuels rising real estate prices and accelerates gentrification. Homes become increasingly inaccessible and unaffordable for the very people who need them most. We understand that the concept of the financialization of housing can feel complex at first, but all we ask is that you remember this illustration and remember the phrase tradable asset. The next time you hear the term financialization of housing, recall this image: someone using homes not as shelter, but as a means of purchase, as currency in a larger transaction. And as you may already know, our City Secrets sketches are later transformed into a collectible City Secrets deck. Each card contains a concentrated piece of valuable knowledge, small enough to carry in your pocket, yet powerful enough to change the way you see your city. You can use them as prompts while walking through urban spaces, as memory triggers while exploring your neighborhood, or as conversation starters with others who care about cities and housing. If you would like to become a collector, join us on Patreon. Not only will you receive the cards, but you will also be directly supporting our work and helping us continue to produce independent urban research and storytelling. You will love the cards. It's a finishing of an episode for financialization.
Thanks for watching this pretty much impressive episode. And please don't forget to check out the book, buy one for you or a gift, or maybe for the neighborhood library or the school or anything, university maybe, or yeah, anything. Allez, now it's coffee time. See you.